You're listening to a podcast from thespoilist.com. Welcome to First Contact, a podcast about Star Trek The Next Generation, where we watch episodes and then talk about them for a little while in a mostly unintelligible way. I'm Andrew.
I'm James.
And I'm Alex.
This week, we have been watching Booby Trap. It was written by Ron Roman, Michael Piller, Richard Danis, Michael Wagner, and it was directed by Gabrielle Beaumont. It first aired the week of October 30th, 1989. James, what's it all about?
The Enterprise investigates the debris of a 1,000-year-old space battle. Picard gets a boner for an abandoned ship, and so leads the away team. Meanwhile, the Enterprise starts acting a little funky, losing power and not moving anywhere, almost as though they've been lured into a booby trap. Despite having a huge engineering team, Geordi decides the best way to solve this is to talk to himself and then simulate a woman in the holodeck, Dr. Leia Brahms, who designed the Enterprise's engines. He really bonds with her like a creepy creepster creep. What a loser. But he also solves the problem, and Picard pilots the ship out of some lovely model asteroids.
Alex, you hadn't seen this episode before. What did you think?
You know what? It's rare, but I don't know what I think. Someone tell me, is this a good episode? I find it very difficult to work out.
Do you know, I'm conflicted on it because I think a lot of it works, but it also reveals what we've all feared about Geordi the most, and I'm not sure we want to know this about our characters that we try to like, and it's just all a little bit sad.
I found it difficult to know what it was they were going for. Was it feel sorry for poor Geordi, how pathetic he is and all this? Or were we meant to be sort of on his side? I didn't know either way, but I wasn't particularly taken on either one.
I think we're supposed to have sympathy towards him because that's the setup. The teaser is Geordi on a date on the holodeck. She's clearly not very comfortable and enjoying it. Then, as a big romantic gesture, he brings out a creepy gypsy man playing the violin.
Chief O'Brien was furious.
He was just standing outside the holodeck with his cello, waiting for the call, but no. I mean, I know I'm no great shakes when it comes to seducing the ladies, but I don't think I would ever go for a weird pirate-looking dude playing a gypsy dance on the violin. I just don't think anybody's going to like that, ever.
Yes, this romantic sunset on the beach really needs the strange gypsy man. Yeah, that sort of set the tone of things for me.
Geordi's trying.
He's very trying.
She's being very mean to him, and I'm down that way.
Are we supposed to feel sympathetic because he's trying far too hard and he's a sort of nice guy loser, but he seems totally socially inept? But I suppose the other aspect of that is that here's this guy that completely understands the Enterprise. He loves the ship, so what's better than, I suppose, a manifestation of the ship in female form? That's the thing he understands, and that's what he can bond with and fall in love with. And that might sound weird, but that is the setup of the episode, isn't it?
What is better than a female manifestation of the Enterprise? That is the setup of this episode.
And with that, you fulfilled so many geeky boys' dreams.
That is it, isn't it? I think Michael Piller said, it's the guy who is in love with his Cadillac, tinkering with his car, and deep down he really just wants to tinker with his car.
Well, there is a euphemism and a half.
I've seen clips of documentaries where men have married their car, and they actually do feel like they're in a relationship with their car. Not that I'm judging, but, there's a precedent.
How would one sleep with the Starship Enterprise?
With the lights on?
The lights on the ship or in the room? It's a pretty big room.
You're not going to go to sleep in engineering. With that warp engine right there. You're not going to turn that off.
Is that noise of the warp engine? Is it always there? It's quite annoying. Does it need to have a sort of synth sound, or have they added that just for kicks?
Maybe that's what does it for Geordie, in the same way that a vibration of a washing machine can be quite pleasing. Maybe that's why he spends so much time down in engineering. He's just getting his rocks off.
You say that, but he never spends any time in engineering, as we have noted on this podcast many times. Even in an episode which is basically about a problem with the warp core, he doesn't spend any time in engineering. Do we even see that set for very long? It's just, nah, Geordie's going to go to the holodeck.
Well, give the man a rest. You need some time to build back up again to another go. Have a cup of tea, stand around on the bridge.
I'm surprised we don't see Riker down there more.
What, straddling the warp core?
Well, we can't just say it's Geordie who is getting turned on by inanimate objects, as Picard seems to be very excited by the Promelian battlecruiser, this 1,000-year-old ship, which is a great piece of archaeology. What a shame that the ship's archaeologist just recently died. I'm sure she would have had a great time on board this ship.
This is the first time they've needed a ship's archaeologist, and she died 3 days before.
Quickly, get her on board the... Oh. In many respects, it would have made more sense to let the boy go.
How do you feel that sequence plays out? Picard insisting you go on the away mission because it's really exciting and he likes the relics from the past. I find that a lot more convincing than his love of Dixon Hill, for example.
Yeah, ships in bottles I can buy easier.
And actually, that's some nice character introduction with his ships in bottles. Didn't you ever have one? And then O'Brien sucking up and going, "Oh, I had one, sir."
Did you? No, I didn't. I just wanted to be involved. I'm so lonely in the transporter room.
It's nice to have a bit of this interaction between Riker and Picard. In the same way, you kind of feel like, the captain shouldn't go on the away mission. We haven't had that enough. Because Kirk shouldn't go down on the away missions, but he always ended up going down. I think it's nice to see a side of Picard where, he's a bit adventurous.
Yeah, but then, with the switch around that happened, Kirk sort of became Riker, and Riker is very much a character that we often see going down.
Bong. Picard going, "Oh, what could possibly go wrong on this 1,000-year-old ship?" It seems a bit of a ridiculous statement. This battleship, which is, for all he knows, been abandoned and itself might have been booby-trapped. I really would send a party ahead before putting the captain of the flagship on board. Maybe that's just me.
Yeah. But he's just so excited about those wrecks. Maybe it's for the sake of the plot.
Yes, and that moves forward at a pace. There's a booby trap. Did everyone know what was going on with the booby trap, really? I don't think I was altogether clear.
Not a bloody clue. I think we've said on this before that when we do these podcasts, we do 2 episodes at once. And quite often we can find ourselves flagging during the second episode, as has probably been evident in some of the podcasts. Notice how much more hyped we were last week. But this one, I have that natural sort of starting to switch off a little bit, and that section in the middle, I just got lost.
It seems to be any time they try to use power, there's actually a power acting against, which means it's draining their power, but they didn't explain it with a really obvious metaphor that would help me understand it. You know, like in Futurama, they say, oh, it's like putting too much air into a balloon. And this one, they could have said, it's like trying to drive with the parking brake on while somebody's charging their car with another car's battery or something like that. So I don't really know how the trap works, but I just know it means that the Enterprise can't move anywhere or use its power, and everyone's in danger.
What are the chances of that happening?
Does anyone have a problem with Geordi's approach to problem solving here? They have a super intelligent android on board who is busy doing something else on the bridge. I can't really remember what. And a whole team of engineers who are presumably quite intelligent, as we know everyone has to be a super genius to get into Starfleet. But he chooses to sit on his own talking to the computer.
They also have Wesley, and he sometimes comes up with solutions when he's pretty much just a child and shouldn't be able to. So why wasn't he there helping out?
Because he's really bloody annoying.
I think he was still sad this week about the death of his father after Picard made him bring up all these repressed emotions. It seems a strange thing to do, but again, for plot, for story, I guess we can buy it. Maybe it makes more sense to use the holodeck as something to help solve problems than it does to actually as an entertainment device. I guess it's another new use for the holodeck, which has often been abused in this show so far.
Do you think, though, that the sort of loner Geordie thing is a bit of retconning, really? Because I never really got the sense in Series 1 and well, 2 to an extent as well, I suppose, that he was this sort of lone wolf geek down in the basement. That feels a very recent development.
I'm not sure they knew what to do with him, because as we may have mentioned on the podcast before, they didn't have any personality trait for him other than he kept mentioning that he was blind, and that wasn't good. His other thing was to sort of make quips on the bridge, which never landed.
Oh god, yeah. That sounds very familiar.
I think you're right. I think this is a bit of retconning, but it makes him a bit human. It gives him a flaw. Hey, Gene, maybe these flaws make for more interesting television.
What I like is floors with mirrors on. That's lovely, Gene. I was talking about character. Yeah, I see some real nice characters, yeah.
Oh, that's why the man was wearing a skirt in the first season.
Shorter.
I thought it was quite interesting to actually go on that set on the holodeck. I'm not sure how it helps you fix a warp core going to the room where it was created, but fine. Seeing the Enterprise under construction outside, I thought that's quite cool. That's quite an interesting shot. Let's linger on that a bit longer. I like that.
Yeah, it's a different bit of scenery, isn't it?
I suppose if they were making this now, they would probably do a dual narrative about the Enterprise getting built at the same time and designing the warp core or something like that, and have some kind of flashback element, but that wasn't popular at this point in time. So shall we talk a bit about Leia Brahms? We've called Geordi a creep in this, but to be fair, it wasn't him that insisted that the computer create a woman for him. He was just talking to basically a log, and then the computer decided, hey Geordi, you might find this helpful. Not totally his fault.
Yeah. It's still not good though, is it?
It's not great. I mean, most people would say, no, when I said show me, just light up the screen a bit. I didn't mean make me a woman, but you know, I'm lonely, so I'm going to bond with a woman here. Does this say something about men writing about technology? Because it's not the first time we've dealt with someone falling in love on the holodeck, as Riker did with Minuet. Is this just the very basic example of this is what we do with a holodeck, isn't it?
But to be fair, it is treated as this is a bit creepy. He's being a bit weird here. He's a bit ashamed of it as well. So, it's not so much celebrating the fact that you can go onto the holodeck and have a romantic relationship with any creator of a warp engine.
But it's also the fact that they're a real person. That's more of a violation. Hey, maybe we'll deal with this at a future date, but...
Maybe with that guy out of the A-Team.
Maybe we'll deal with it with Geordi as well when the real Leia Bram shows up next season. I don't know. I'm just guessing. As creepy, I don't know if we're meant to find it creepy. I don't know. There's nobody else there to judge Geordi.
Picard comes in and he does kind of... That seems to be like Geordi is a bit ashamed of what he's been doing. He kind of has to weasel his way out of explaining why Leia Brahms is there.
Geordi, did you make a woman? No. It looks quite a lot like a woman. It's a computer, Captain. I see. Geordi, you're what I like to refer to as a pervert.
Well, Picard is very nonchalant about her, isn't he? He's not judgmental.
He feels sad for Geordi, I think. Your best friend is a robot man, and your girlfriend is made of photons and magnetic force fields. And then Geordi solves the problem. So instead of using lots of power, they only use a little bit of power, and because of inertia, they just keep going, and Picard pilots out. Now, that might be a bit dull, but actually with the use of model shots and Picard flying the ship, I really like it, because it's visually interesting, and it's quite cool to see the Enterprise manoeuvring in ways I've not seen before.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always one for something different. It's part of why I find the episode very hard to evaluate, to be honest. More so for the Geordi stuff, though. I don't know how to feel about any of that.
I suppose the thing is, though, it's not Planet of the Cowboys or something like that. It is about a character on the Enterprise, and it's about them going through some kind of personal journey, some kind of growth, and learning about them. And whether we like that or not, the intention is there to actually get under the skin of the character in a science fiction environment. And that's something you can say about last week's episode as well. So I think we've got to give it credit for that, because it's definitely becoming its own thing now. Star Trek Next Generation. It's moved beyond, going to Planet Hell, encountering the alien race, solving their problems, kissing their woman.
Oh, absolutely. I'm all for introspection. As you say, it's not... this week, the world is ruled by women. God, imagine what that must be like. We're a long way from Series 1. It's definitely better. There is no question.
Also, something that I've noticed of late. Last week there wasn't a B plot. Really, this week there isn't. There's obviously two strands. You've got what's going on the bridge and them trying to investigate what's going on, and then Geordi trying to solve the power problems of the Enterprise, but it's all very much of a piece. It all ties together. Nothing feels out of place.
Yeah, it's better for that. Some of those B plots in the past were, god awful, to be honest, sometimes. And I can understand the reasoning for doing that. Having a B plot, it expands what you're doing, and you can have a satisfying tie-off between the two, but more often than not, it seemed to fall flat. So I'm all for having one core narrative, but giving everyone something to do within it and having the different strands.
I think it might be that they were just very short of scripts, so they just had to write one script that's very focused on this one plot line without faffing about with a B plot. just to integrate a couple of other characters who were not there today.
Well, there is the danger of that becoming too simple as well. The Survivors is a great example of that, which we really struggle to talk about because there's nothing to it. It's not actually that interesting. And there's a lot to be said for a simple idea well executed. But there's also the danger that that's not interesting enough to hold your interest throughout the entire episode. And this one is just a little bit troubling. It's a little bit weird. You almost want that scene at the end with Geordie to say goodbye, not, we'll maybe work together sometime. You don't want him to kiss her, because it's just weird. He should go, no, this isn't right. I need to meet a real woman. And maybe him going up to the girl from the start of the episode and saying, hey, I know I was weird before, give me another chance. I'll give you some hot chocolate.
And then she maces him.
Hey, remember Guinan's in this episode?
And she's a woman?
God, I'd nearly forgotten about that horrificness.
As a woman, what are you looking for as a woman?
Guinan, you're a woman. What do you look for in a man? The head. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
So a bald man was kind to Guinan once, and that's why she likes bald men. I'm sure they won't build a two-parter around that sentence.
We'll never know unless we follow Time's arrow. But more on that in about 7 years.
Yeah!
So in conclusion, does anyone know how they feel about this episode?
No, I'm very conflicted. But I appreciate what they were trying to do.
What about you, James?
Yeah, I quite like it. It's a nice bit of filler, really. With season 3, I'm just waiting until the next episode, and I hope, because I haven't seen the next episode in a long while, I hope I'm not jumping ahead of myself by saying the next episode is where we really start to get a genuinely good episode in season 3. Everything up until now has just kind of felt like filler. They're just doing an episode because they have to do an episode, and it's not until next week when they really just want to do a genuinely good piece of Star Trek.
Well, I look forward to that then. For a little filler of our own, we're going off to Quickfire.
Quickfire.
Did you notice the new uniform? Picard has a new uniform on. Up until now, there's been some stitching down the middle of the uniform, but Picard's been given one that doesn't have this. The rest of the cast will have it rolled out very soon.
Oh, the rest of the cast were really stitched up there.
This is the first time Star Trek has been directed by a woman. That's slightly pathetic, Star Trek, for all your talk of equality, your male-dominated writer's room, and everyone behind the scenes. What's wrong with you?
So originally the holodeck set was to be a mock-up of the warp engine, but time constraints forced the set we ended up with. Why didn't Geordie just recreate engineering on the holodeck?
I was going to say, they do have a version of the warp engine there, don't they? And if it was on the holodeck, he could take it apart because it's not dangerous there. I'd just like to highlight the line in reference to the warp core. Every time you touch it, it's me.
Now, I thought that was strange. Aside from anything else, I get the impression you probably don't want to go touching the warp core. That's probably quite an unsafe activity. But, yeah, just to get to the creepy the creepy part of it, if she is the personification of that sounds like molestation.
What percentage accuracy did the computer say the holographic Leia Brahms was?
It was within 9%, I believe.
I'm sure that will be borne out by a future episode in which Leia Brahms arrives.
A bit of trivia from Star Trek 365. Booby Trap offered Captain Picard the rare opportunity to man the Enterprise's helm. Patrick Stewart prepared for this task with a bit of method acting, drawing on a memory from shooting the series pilot. He'd seen Brent Spiner crack his knuckles and stretch his finger at the ops control, so Stewart mined the same. It was a little homage to Brent, explaining Stewart emulated the action to make it appear that all Starfleet people do this to warm up their fingers. They don't, of course. And Stewart's playful hand jive wouldn't appear in the episode, as he no doubt knew. Playful hand jive? What, like Al Jolson? Also, why would you go up to control, which, let's be honest, are largely buttons, crack your knuckles, stretch your fingers and go, right, now, switch. Well, it's that time. I'm sorry. We have to turn to the Nitpicker's Guide for Next Generation Trekkers, which this time states, poor Lieutenant Commander Geordie LaForge. Here he is on the Enterprise, populated by the finest of Starfleet's engineering staff, and he has to get a holographic representation to help him solve a problem. This strange credulity. I would expect a more professional approach, like the one in Hollow Pursuits. In that episode, LaForge called his top engineers together to solve a perplexing problem. Oh, God, Geordie on his own, almost as if that was the point.
Originally, Brahms was going to be named Navid Daystrom and was to be a descendant of Richard Daystrom from the original series episode The Ultimate Computer. But unfortunately, the casting department hired a white actress.
Originally, it was meant to be Picard who was talking to Leia Brahms, but Michael Piller said, Picard should be on the bridge, not chatting with some women. I said to myself, it should be Geordie, because Geordie is in love with the ship, and this is a story about a guy in love with his 57 Chevy. That plays into Geordie's character, who's always been a fumbling guy around women. There was a lot of complaints to HR about that. But if he could just marry his car, he'd live happily ever after. Right. That wraps up yet another episode of First Contact. And remember, when you hit that download button, every time you touch it, it's us. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. Geordie, have you ever tried something called pornography? I bought you one of these. It's called a fleshlight. Wow, Captain, with its cylindrical core, it reminds me of the warp drive. Oh, Geordie.